Hotspur have appointed Thomas Frank as their new head coach.
And the consistency and the players know the patterns. But of course I'm aware that we need to be flexible sometimes.
You look what Thomas Frank has done over the course of 7 highly successful years, that you can understand why Tottenham would be interested.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. This is episode 239. We've got Caroline alongside. She is at CG Stefco. Caroline, what's going on this fine Sunday?
Not too much. Just been in family mode with my nieces visiting. Just doing a lot of activities with them and not paying a whole lot of attention to Spurs. So y'all will be teaching me some things, I think, in this episode about what's been going on.
Well, luckily for you, not a whole hell of a lot, but we're still here to pod about it, which is a good thing. Scott's also with us. He's at Scott G. Bird. Scott, how are you, man?
Chilling. Definitely been there on the Spurs front. Tots is going to be interesting today. But yeah, I've honestly just been enjoying my weekend watching the Jurassic Park. I almost said trilogy. I don't know the word. There's 6 of them, so whatever it is, the franchise, right? But I watched the second most recent one, got really into it, and said, you know what, I got to start from number 1 and go all the way through. So I just finished 3 this morning. I've typically just watching Jurassic Park with a sleeping baby on my chest has been my life for quite some time. I do also have to shout out the new kit that I got. It's the Champions 25. It's one that I won't wear very often. It's probably going to be framed eventually, but I figured I had to throw it on for a pod. So
yeah, I was gonna say that's not the new home kit. That's last year's home kit.
No, yeah.
The new home kit is actually
25.
the training top. Yeah, we're gonna talk kits a little bit later as well. The away kit is out, and I think most of us are thumbs up on the away kit. We've got a third kit coming here soon as well. It's funny you bring up Jurassic Park, man. We didn't talk about this at all in our pre-show banter, but I had totally I've always been a huge fan of the Jurassic Park movies, even the bad ones. Like I'll just throw them on occasion because they're just it's awesome. Dinosaurs, man. It's dinosaurs. It's entertaining. Like the first Jurassic Park movie from 1993 is obviously a great film and a classic, and many people point to that film as one of their favorite films. But I didn't even remember that there was a new Jurassic Park movie coming out, and it's literally coming out later this week. And only over the last few days have I started to see like commercials and content about it. I think they've waited as long as they possibly could to try to promote this new one, probably knowing that it's just, another one, which is fine. But it's so funny you bring that up because I was also thinking about Jurassic Park this morning while watching some television. I saw a bunch of commercials with Jurassic Park content, so it's really funny that you brought that up.
Peacock's been pumping the new one a little bit, but the interesting thing to me is, like I said, I watched number 3 this morning. So what? 2 is The Lost World, I think, and then 3 is just Jurassic Park 3. And in all 3 of the first 3 films, the main character, right, Alan, in number 3, goes to the island because they're going to give him a fat check to continue his research. And in all 3 of the first 3 movies, they take money and they go to the Death Island for the fat check. And 1, learn your lesson. 2, capitalism is alive and well, and we got to do something about that. But that's for another episode. So
yeah, that's for we'll come up with a different segment other than tots for that segment for sure. There was speaking of content, there was some content earlier this week put out by one Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. They released a documentary this week on their Europa League campaign. I know we discussed this earlier and neither of you have had a chance to see it, but it's about 45 minutes long. It's on the club website on Spurs Play, and I will say it was not remarkable, but it was also delightful. It was a delightful little 45-minute watch. Nice little something to have on in the background. I did take a look at it. They did a really good job of going through the Elfsborg match where the 3 young players all scored to kind of pull away. I think that was the final group stage match, if I recall correctly. And one of the last few. And they had really cool interviews with some of the players, and it was nice. So if you're looking for some, a little revisit to what just happened in the world of Tottenham Hotspur, go check out that Europa League documentary that the club just put out. It is, like I said, it's pretty cool. It was not remarkable. You're not going to learn anything, but you're going to get to revisit what was a really cool campaign. And So that's my recommendation if you're looking for some non-dinosaur related content this week. Lots of like little bits of news this week, guys, and we're going to kind of hit on a lot of it, maybe just scratch the surface. There's just not a ton going on, to be perfectly honest. I did want to start us off by shouting out Archie Gray, U21 Euro winner, just a few weeks after a Europa League winner. Really cool story for him. I read a stat the other day that said that there was one stretch of the season where Archie Gray had played the most minutes of anyone in the 5 major leagues in Europe when he was, bouncing around to all the different positions. And we obviously didn't see a lot of Archie Gray toward the tail end of the season when the club got healthier and he wasn't having to play center back all the time because Romero and Van de Ven were back. But I just thought it was a really cool little tip of the cap to Archie Gray. And I'm really excited to see what comes for Archie Gray, where he settles, if he settles even at a position. What are you guys' thoughts on Archie Gray going forward? Because I feel like he's one of those, we've talked about it a little bit. I feel like he's one of those players that could become almost in the Ben Davis mold of you can play a little fullback, you can play a little center back. Maybe we haven't seen Ben Davis play in the midfield at the number 6 role, but some people tend to think that Gray could fit in there. I'm excited to see his evolution and what becomes of him. And this guy's already got 2 trophies under his belt now as a young player. I just think that's a really cool part of this.
Yeah, I think honestly, the big thing that's going to come out of last season is that so many of our young players did get way more experience than we would have expected them to by this point. And I think Archie's going to be especially set up for success under Thomas Frank, because we know Frank is a manager who's going to be flexible tactically. So having that kind of versatility in a player like Archie Gray is going to be really important. And honestly, I think it's funny you mentioned Ben Davis, because we know that he's kind of like mentored Archie. So, in a literal sense, I think he is kind of like a mini Ben Davis at this point. But yeah, I think it can only be a good thing that he's had this, summer tournament experience. I don't think he played too much towards the end of the tournament, but he was like starting at the beginning of it. So that was a really great experience for him to kind of get like more of the international game time. And, I feel like he's someone who we could see in the England senior squad at some point.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thomas Frank is most likely going to use a double pivot. I expect Archie to play quite a bit in that double pivot. I think if I look at our midfield contingent, and there's really nothing as far as rumors of us signing anyone who I think would usurp him in the order. But I personally feel that Bentaker and Bergvall are probably just a step ahead, but Archie Gray is right there in terms of ability to play in that double pivot. And then, of course, you have Sarr as well. But, yeah, I think Archie Gray will play a lot of midfield. I don't expect to see us use a lone 6 very often. I really don't think we have anyone who's capable of playing that role effectively. And people will argue Basuma, but just sell Basuma and we can just stop having that conversation. But yeah, I expect Archie to play a lot of midfield, and then he's going to have to play some fullback too, because there are rumors of us bringing in another fullback. But whatever way you chalk it up, whether it's on the right side or the left side, he's going to be deputizing either Poro or Udogie in this fullback position. So yeah, I think you guys are spot on. I think he's going to be a utility guy, but I do think he'll play a lot more in the midfield than maybe many people are thinking right now.
No doubt. Speaking of young players, and a player that I mentioned, a young player who scored in that Europa League game against Elfsborg, Damola Ajayi has joined Doncaster Rovers in League One on loan for the 2025-26 season. Hopefully a good move for him to get some more experience under his belt. A couple of other things, this week is, I think, when we really start to expect the transfers to move. We're getting the end of June. This is the last podcast we're going to do in the month of June. July comes on Tuesday, and that means contracts are coming to an end, and we're going to see officially the likes of Matisse Tell, Kevin Danso, Vuskovic, all these guys coming in, which I think is a good thing. And I think this is the part of the year where we're really going to see things start to move. 2 names I wanted to touch on before we get into the tots of it all. Alejo Veliz is one of them. He appears to be on his way out. Now, Spurs signed Alejo Veliz, the striker, the Argentinian, for £13 million back in 2023 from Rosario Central. he is apparently going to be leaving now for somewhere in the neighborhood of like £3 million. And that's obviously not good business. And we don't like to see it. But I guess Spurs have gone through this a little bit with some of these different types of players. Brian Heel, for example, comes to mind, where it's just a player that comes in and you hope maybe a loan or two, and then he can come into the system and kick on, and just never really happened for Alejo Veliz thus far. It's obviously disappointing, but at this point, with the way that this club is structured, I feel like getting more of these types of players out and moving them on is actually a good thing, even if you are having to take a cut and take a loss. What are our thoughts on the rumors surrounding Alejo Veliz heading back to Argentina?
Yeah, obviously I think it's the right move for him. I don't think he's going to pan out in Europe, but I don't fault the club at all for the decision there. I think you have to take a punt on South American youngsters every once in a while. They either amount to nothing or they amount to, a $50 million price tag in the future or whatever. I think my only asterisk would be probably stay away from Argentina right now. Football in Argentina is just kind of at a very low point historically. Boca and who are there? River. Thank you. Thanking myself for remembering, but Boca and River are the two standouts, and Boca's in a tough place right now. They recently fired their coach after bowing out in the earliest stage of Copa Libertadores, and River's doing okay, but they have no competition, right? So it's all Brazil right now from a South American perspective. So be nice to see him end up somewhere other than Racing, but all the best to Alejo Veliz. But ultimately, like I said, I don't mind us losing $10 million on this deal. I think from time to time you need to take a punt on South American youngsters, and maybe we just do a little bit better job of that next time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've seen in the past what happens when we don't move players along quickly enough. They linger around the squad, and it's not good for their career. It's not good for our squad capacity, which we know is kind of an issue at the moment, especially in terms of like the homegrown quotient not being where we need it to be. So I think this was a pretty easy decision, and hopefully, he can get his career back on track. I didn't really know that about the state of Argentina football, so that's kind of concerning, but maybe this will just be like a stepping stone move for him.
Yeah, I mean, for context, Veliz came in the same time as Mickey Van de Ven. So like it's been a short-ish stay for him, but I was hopeful. I was more hopeful. I mean, the hype surrounding Veliz was really there, and it just hasn't really quite panned out. There's also hype surrounding a new signing that we believe is going to be coming through the door this week. We learned about it last week through some reporting, but Spurs appear set to sign Japanese center back Kota Takai from the J-League's Kawasaki Frontale. He's a 20-year-old that's rumored to be joining for a £5 million fee. Now, as of this morning, Takai was still playing for his squad. The J-League is going on right now, and he started today in a 1-0 defeat in the J-League. But I don't know what that means for him joining up immediately with Spurs, or if it's going to be one of those situations where he maybe waits till his season is over and then takes a little break and is more of a player for the second half of this season. But all the word is from the reporting that we've seen, mostly from Football.London, is that this player is expected to come in and be a part of the first team and be a part of the center back stable for this club almost immediately, which is a little surprising to me. He's a 20-year-old. He's coming from the J-League. I don't know what to make of that. What do you guys think?
Well, at the time when we signed Mickey, we weren't really sure how he was going to work out either. So you really, truly never know. He could be a great talent. The only surprise for me around this signing is that it's happening now and not under Ange, because I feel like we expected him to sort of use the J-League as a recruitment source, knowing that he had managed there previously. So to be getting a player from Japan now feels kind of funny. But yeah, candidly, I don't know much about this guy, so I don't have any other input than that.
Yeah, I don't know a ton either. I do know he was the young player of the year in the J League last year. I think it's a good point what you make, Caroline. I think could be the case where Ange put this guy on our radar, right? And now we're still interested in bringing him through. But I thought it was a little interesting because when it comes to the center back position, we have a plethora of talent in the youth department. I think when you look at Dorrington and you look at Ashley Phillips and you look at Luka Vuskovic coming in, so maybe he's a real talent, and we felt like it was worth continuing to kind of bloat the center back ranks there again from a youth perspective. And I look at obviously very different positions, but Matoma, very similar signing that Brighton made, and he lit things up pretty quickly, right? So I don't think the J League is anything to shake a stick at, and he could end up being a real talent. But I wouldn't be surprised if we end up, as you kind of both have alluded to, signing him and then keeping him with Kawasaki Frontale. I'm not familiar at all with that club, so I hope I've said that correctly. But wouldn't be surprised if he's on loan, quote unquote, until the end of the J League season, and then he meets up with us similar to a Yang Min Hyuk last season.
He does have some height. He's like 6'3", 6'4", and is apparently very good in the air, but obviously that's a lot easier to do in Japan versus in England, where the players are bigger and stronger and faster and much more talented. I'm just not going to sugarcoat that. And it's funny, you mentioned Ashley Phillips. There's a lot of rumors surrounding his name as well, that he could be off to Sheffield United for a pretty small fee. So we'll just see how all of that shakes out. But I'm hoping that Takai is not the center back, option for depth. Like he's not the only one. He's apparently right-footed, but has regularly played on the left side. So that's obviously a benefit as well, but we'll just have to see and see how he beds in and if he beds in quite immediately. That said, Scott, I want to kind of turn it over to you. What have you been tracking in terms of the transfers? Let's go to Tots. What do you got for us, man?
Good old Tots. First thing on my list, you kind of already touched on. It looks like Phillips is moving closer to a $6 million move to Sheffield United, which I think is a good move. I don't expect him to see much of a career at Spurs, and as you kind of mentioned earlier, we need to get better about moving players on. We touched on Takai, we touched on Oliver Boast. More from a rumors perspective, everyone's been talking about Brian Mbeumo. We can kiss that one goodbye. He has definitively told Spurs and Brentford that he's only interested in a move to United, and reportedly going to be earning $250K a week. Our highest earner is Son at 190. He's not going to earn more than Son, so can't fault somebody for taking probably what ends up being $100K more per week than what we would have offered, I would imagine, just speculating there, right? But good chunk of change, and he's going to obviously play a really important role for Man United, so probably a good move for him, albeit a bummer for us. More so of a bummer, Eberechi Eze, who everybody's been talking about as the star-studded signing this summer. It looks like he is on his way to Arsenal. Nothing is official yet, but he has agreed personal terms with Arsenal. What is what I'm understanding. Two teams are still working out the details, but there is a release clause. I think Arsenal bid 58. The release clause is 68. So I'm assuming they're going to find common ground there, but personal terms are agreed, and he wants to move to Arsenal. I think maybe a bit of a gamble for him, right? They are a little bit more set in his area of the pitch than we are. He would definitely be one of the first names on the team sheet at Spurs, but I can't fault him for wanting to go to a team that's competing for real honors right now. We've got some ground to make up there. We are looking at Jacob Ramsey in a reported $40 million move from Aston Villa. I don't think that one has as many legs as we'd like to believe, right? I think he's a real talent, but I think most of that's coming from the fact that Villa has to sell to meet PSR standards this summer, and Jacob Ramsey's homegrown and going to be one of the best ways for them to meet their PSR obligations there. But Spurs are apparently, again, looking at Jacob Ramsey as a real option. And then the only other thing on my list, like you kind of already touched on, is, again, reportedly Spurs won't be making any moves until the PSR fiscal year rolls over, which is this coming Tuesday. I don't know the date off the top of my head. I never know. It's the 29th today, so
it's July 1. It's the end of the month. End of the month. And that's the thing. A lot of contracts are going to be ending come Monday on the third, end of June, and that's where all of this kind of kicks off. This date, like this pod that we're doing here now, is kind of the end of everything that we've seen, and we're moving forward now. Like, Spurs also announced this week that they've added another preseason friendly. They're going to travel to Reading on July 19th, which is a Saturday. And when I glanced at my calendar, I realized, oh, that's less than 3 weeks away. So like we are now like officially entering preseason mode. And it's like 3 weeks till they actually kick a ball that doesn't matter, but that will start to matter, because we're going to start to get a look at some of these players. And hopefully over the next less than 3 weeks, we get some of these signings that you're talking about over the line. I'm curious what Caroline, what you make of the two big names that have been rumored a lot, Mbeumo and Eze, appearing to not going to be working out. Where does that leave you with your thoughts of, I've talked for weeks about how I think there are a lot of attacking players on this team and none that, I really like Tell, obviously. I love Solanke in the middle, but like outside of that, what do we have? We have a lot of names, but no one that's really standing out and jumping to the forefront other than maybe those two I just mentioned. And with Mbeumo and Eze potentially not coming in, what are you feeling about this attacking front right now?
Well, personally, I feel like we do have quite a lot of attacking talent in the squad that Frank can work with. It's funny because I think it was Scott mentioned that Eze might struggle to fit in at Arsenal because of competition for places. And I honestly feel like it could be the same situation at Spurs. Like we really do have it kind of crowded in that area of the squad. So, I'm not thrilled about what this says, I guess, about, Tottenham's stature at this point in time, because it kind of feels like we're back to where we were a couple of seasons ago, where it was like, nobody wants to come to Tottenham. It's a mess right now. There's too much change going on. They just want to go to these more, established clubs, which even though we know that United isn't just as much of a mess as we are, they have that reputation that just never lets them down, which is very frustrating to me, obviously. But yeah, I think to me, there are other areas in the squad where we don't have the depth and we really should be focusing on more. But unfortunately, like Scott alluded to, we're not really hearing links for, say, a number 6 or fullback depth. It's kind of like, I don't really know what we're doing here. But at the same time, there are players like Eze, especially, that I think if you can get them, you kind of have to, like, they're that talented. So it's a shame that he's obviously looking elsewhere now. And Mbeumo, I know we talked about last week, and I thought that would be a great signing in terms of, how he would actually fit into the team. But if he doesn't want to be at Tottenham, that's fine. My attitude is always, we need players who are actually excited about the project. And if that's not going to be the case, then it is what it is.
Yeah, the big number 6 rumor for weeks and weeks was the American Johnny Cardoza, and now it appears he's off to Atletico Madrid. And he didn't really, your face says it all, Caroline.
I watched him with the U.S. all summer. We did not need that guy.
No, it doesn't do a lot for me either. But like you said, there's just not a lot of smoke out there, much less fire. And I agree with you 100% on the front line. There's a lot of names up there, and we've talked about it. Johnson, Odegaard. Is Son going to be sticking around? Is Richarlison going to be sticking around? You've got, is Kulusevski, when he gets healthy, is he going to play wide, or is he going to more play in Madison's role? Like, there are a lot of options out there, but it's just none of them are really jumping off the page as, oh yeah, let's hit the ground running. I kind of slightly disagree on Eze. I feel like he would have jumped right in and really hit the ground running. You get Tell, Solanke, Eze, and then have options of Odegaard, Johnson, like that excited me a little bit. So I am a little disappointed, especially the fact that it sounds like it's going to be Arsenal that he goes to. That part disappoints me, but otherwise it's just a lot of a lack of smoke and therefore a lack of fire when it comes to the rumors right now, Scott.
Yeah. The other name that I think the most realistic name for us to go out and sign is Jack Grealish. And I only say that because he's only linked to Spurs and Everton right now, and he is the bookies' favorites at 9-2. You'd know better than I would as to what that means, right? But he's the clear favorite out of Vegas Spurs are the clear favorite out of Vegas to sign Jack Grealish, and he's definitively leaving City. So I think that one probably has the most legs of anything that we're seeing, but I don't really bring that up because that would just be regurgitated from the same thing we said last week. And again, nothing's probably going to happen until at least next week. I think I'm a little less confident that we have what we need up top. I love Brennan Johnson, but I do not think he is the winger that we need in the Frank system. Frank is going to invert his wingers. I think you have to put Johnson on the left side in that case, and I just think Tell and Son are miles ahead of Johnson when it comes to being an inverted winger. I think Johnson would be really effective in a front two, potentially very effective in a counterattacking system, but I just don't think he's the profile that we need for Thomas Frank. I'm also not as high on Wilson Odobert, and I know he's been injured, but I think that was more of a buy because we were able to do it and Burnley were going down, but I just don't think he's going to light the league on fire at any point in his career. I think we have Tell as a really talented winger. I think we have Son as a really talented winger, and that's obviously up in the air with some of the things that we're hearing. And I think potentially Kulusevski on the right side could be really effective in a Frank system, but I think that's it. And I think Eze and Mbeumo are both names that would really elevate our game, especially at the right wing position. I think Eze can play on the left. Eze can play cam. I think Eze is better than James Maddison, as harsh as that is to say about somebody who already wears the shirt, right? But and most England managers have agreed over the past 2 years, right? So just big misses for us that I think we're going to regret, and it tells me a lot about where we're at as a club. It's really two things. You've already mentioned the turnover, especially at the head coach position, right? We really can't seem to get that right, and now we're bringing in somebody who, look, I like Thomas Frank, but we're bringing in the Brentford manager, and I think if you're looking from the outside in, you're saying, I've kind of seen this song and dance from Spurs before, right? They're just a club in turmoil. Most importantly, it's wage structure. That's why Brandon Mbeumo is going to Man United. Again, we're talking unless we were willing to pay Mbeumo more than Heung-min Son, which really can't happen. We're talking 60K plus more per week at United than he would be earning at Spurs, right? And I think from a fan perspective, sitting here making a podcast, it's easy to talk in hypotheticals, but $60,000 every week, that's serious cash, right? And you start thinking about your family and your livelihood and your future generations and all of that. And it's pretty hard to turn down an extra 60K a week plus the Man United badge to come to Spurs, who are in absolute turmoil. So I'm not surprised at all that this is happening. And I think we're in for a pretty underwhelming summer when it comes to incomings, and we may just find ourselves seeing what we can get out of the squad that we've already have.
All right, I'm gonna slightly push back because you've used the word turmoil surrounding Spurs a few times, and you just did it in comparison to Manchester United, which is the team that we just beat to win a trophy and get ourselves into the Champions League over them. So to save you from the listeners and the viewers and the commenters, I'm gonna push back slightly, only because I get what you're saying with the managerial change and the wage structure and all of those sorts of things, but this still can be a moment where Spurs kick on and do use the winning a trophy thing as a springboard, even though they did change managers and refuse to change wage structure. There's a lot of newness that we knew was going to be coming in this summer. I don't see it as turmoil. I'm still holding out a little bit of I'm still protecting my heart a little bit here, but like I'm still holding out a little bit of hope that this can be good under Thomas Frank, and this can be positive, and that like I'm not in the camp that's freaking out about there haven't been any signings yet. What are we doing? We're wasting time. Like I'm not there. We still have, like I said, a little less than 3 weeks before the first preseason game, where I think we're just going to see a lot of bodies that have been around anyway, and see Thomas Frank kind of get to know this squad and get to know the players. So I'm just going to push back on the word turmoil a little bit. I don't see this club in turmoil right now, especially coming off of its first trophy in more than a decade and a half.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I think that it's less than stable for sure. I mean, I don't think there's any arguing that.
It's never been stable, though.
Yeah, fair. Man United is equally in turmoil. I have to make that clear, right? But they just pay players a lot more to come join the turmoil than we do.
And they don't have Champions League money, and they don't have, there's a lot of things they don't have that we do.
They do have, they're always going to have money regardless of Champions League. I mean, there's some stats I can share really quick here about where Spurs are. It's reported that we had a pre-tax loss of 26 million last season, down from 94.7 million in 22-23. So there's improvement there. We've reported 182 million 3-year loss as of June 30th, I believe. June 30th, 2024. So you tack on the 26 million that we reported on top of there, and we're looking at about a $200 million loss over the past few seasons. We are still PSR compliant, but from what I read through the Telegraph this morning, that's really only because of allowable deductions, which are infrastructure, the stadium, of course, the academy, and then the women's team are the 3 deductions that we're using to keep ourselves above water. But my understanding is that it's all stemming from the fact that we spread out payments for incoming players over 5-6 seasons, and we've just been missing when it comes to these incomings, right? So we're probably still paying for Tongi. We're probably still paying for GLC at this point. So we've really put ourselves in a difficult position because of the terrible job we've done with incomings, and that factors in here too. So maybe that's some of where I use the word turmoil. I just think we're unstable, and frankly, I think, again, this is going to be met with some disagreement probably, but if I look at what happened last season, 17th place, we won the Europa League, but we beat AZ Alkmaar, we beat a Norwegian side, and we beat an awful Man United side to win that competition. Now, I do give a little bit of love to Frankfurt because I think they're a pretty good side, and I think that the away leg in Frankfurt was really the one match in that Europa League one that I'll hang my hat on and say, damn, good job, Spurs. But I think everything else we just kind of putz through and won a competition with a pretty weakened field, right? So again, it's a trophy, but if I'm an actual football player who's thinking about my career, I don't put a ton of stock into the fact that Spurs just won the Europa League. Maybe just a personal opinion, but I think that does factor in.
Well, and I also think in terms of like player recruitment, the perception of a club like United is that they're just temporarily down on their luck. Whereas players look at Spurs and they think this is a team that could be on the rise. Do I want to get in on it now, or do I want to wait until they're actually, more established? And like you said, I don't think winning the Europa League necessarily has changed that perception. Yes, we do have Champions League football to offer players, but I think if you're going to look at someone like Eze that we've talked about at length, he's someone who has already established himself as a top player. So it doesn't do him any good to come to a club like Spurs where, the entire club is having to prove itself. That's why if you look at the best players we've had in recent seasons, like Van de Ven, Vicario, these were players who had something to prove themselves. And so they're looking at Spurs as an opportunity to grow with the club. So I think that's why we're kind of seeing that it's not going to be easy for us to make one of those prestige signings this summer, I don't think.
100%.
Well, and the answer to, whenever you're questioning why something is the way that it is, most of the time the answer is money. And that it really all does come back down to Spurs don't pay players as much as other teams do. It's a really simple equation there as well. So when you have to try and do this while paying players less than other teams do, it becomes a heck of a lot harder to do. So that's
and if you look at Emblemo, people are going to say Champions League. You can also look at it from perspective of, again, 60,000+ more per week, probably more than that, right? That he's been offered by United, and he doesn't have to go to Italy and Spain and Germany every single week and be away from his family. And
fewer games for more money. I'm in, whatever. Sure.
And let's be honest, Spurs are not winning the Champions League. I hate saying it, but it's not happening, right?
All right. You know what? You're not allowed to watch that documentary now. I've just decided. All your negativity today. I'm done. I'm done.
Man. Hey,
no, you're right. You're right. It's going to be hard. It's going to be, but this is, we talked for years and years about a long, painful rebuild after Pochettino, and then I guess you could kind of say that happened, but now it's like a whole new type of rebuild because you're building off of something that is there. Like Spurs have brought in a lot of really talented young players. And of course, the knock on them last season was that it was all young players and not enough experience and not enough, players that are ready to plug and play and go right for it. And I think while we would like to see them sign more 27, 28-year-olds that are ready to just go and get into the lineup and play, it's going to take some time still, especially when you need to figure out, okay, who of these young players that have been brought in over the last, let's say, 18 months under Postecoglou, who of those players is Thomas Frank going to want to work with going forward? And who of those players is going to fit into what he wants to do with this club? It's not a whole new rebuild. I'm not going to go there, but it is, you're trying to build something on top of something that's already built. And you've got to make sure that that structure is sound enough to build on top of it first.
All well said, and it just makes me that much more excited that we signed a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old to continue to boost our ready-made ranks here at Tottenham Hotspur.
That is how it's gone.
From everything we're learning, I'll also say this: like, I know I'm sounding like an absolute just slog right now. I don't care. I'm not worked up about any of this. Like, I'm perfectly fine. But is there something to the fact that Johan Lange is maybe becoming a little bit of a problem? Like, yeah, dude, I very much appreciate you preparing us for the future, but like, the future looks pretty good right now. Like, let's maybe think a little bit more about the present. I wonder at what point that ends. And again, a lot can happen this summer. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I think that's why, I think there's been some sort of disappointment around the fact that our only like solid link so far is to, this 20-year-old center back. Because it's like, well, it's not really helping our situation. We really do need some of those like peak age players to supplement the youth. And I feel bad for him if he does end up signing with us, officially, that he's going to come in with this sort of baggage already that has nothing to do with him, but that's where we are.
That's what happens for any player that signs for Spurs, unfortunately. That's what happens. Speaking of signings on the women's side of things, we do have a few notes. Molly Bartrip is back, a new contract through the 2028 season with Spurs women. And then Rosella Ayen is moving on after 6 seasons, 109 games with the club, 12 goals across all competitions. Caroline, where do you want to go first? But Bartrip or Ayen? I mean, these are 2 players that have been around now for a while, and one sticking and one leaving.
Yeah, I was just very relieved about Molly's contract extension because, frankly, she's the only center back I have faith in at the moment. I would include Luana Buhler in that if she was not so injury prone, but
yeah, she's never
alas, that is the reality. But, really, I think it's time that we need to get a really solid partner for Molly in the center back duo, because I feel like it would really elevate her game if she was able to have that kind of player beside her. But as it is, she's been one of our most consistent players. In a literal sense, she played every minute of the WSL season again. I think this is the second time she's done that since she joined Spurs. And she's a leader in the squad. We know, she's one of the co-captains. So really, this was a contract that absolutely had to happen. So I'm glad it's done. As for Roz, I sadly feel like it had come to the point where she was no longer at the level that we're trying to get to. But this is still a player who's made 100 appearances with the club. She has given us some great moments. One of them a little humorous in the infamous Hand of Roz incident against Man City. But I also was thinking about her this morning and like what her sort of legacy is as a player. And I think people overlook how important she's been to her national team with Morocco, because, that was a team that really did not have any claim to fame. And then within, just about a year or so, they reached the AFCON final and then also made it out of the group stage at the World Cup. And she was a big part of that team, as their striker, a position we didn't always see her playing at Spurs, weirdly. But yeah, I think that was really important. And it's a shame that Morocco is kind of letting all that go to waste by hiring, the former Spain manager and kind of just erasing all the vibes that they had built up. But yeah, I think Roz, we can wish her well in the next stage of her career for everything that she did at Spurs. And yeah, it was time, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a weird time of transition, obviously, for the women's team. Obviously, there's still no manager that has been named, which I would expect has to happen this week. Like we just talked about on the men's side, we're only a couple of weeks away on the men's side from preseason matches starting, and I know we've got the women's Euro coming up, which is gonna, I won't say hamper things, but whenever there's a big international tournament, things tend to get put on hold on the club side of things. But I would hope that a manager is going to be coming through the door this week, if not by next week, because you've got to get the ball rolling on that and got to find some kind of a direction. But I certainly second you on Roz. Like that's a tip of the cap, and thanks for your service. The Bartrip signing is important to me because there needs to be some veteran leadership and some establishment there. And, both these players that we're talking about here are 29, like, that's the kind of veteran leadership you need. And obviously, you've got Ash, you've got Beth, but like there needs to be more bodies and more leadership within this club, especially when there isn't leadership right now at the top. Like that's extremely necessary, at least in my eyes. So Scott, where are you at with the women's team, man? Feels like it's been dragging for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add to what you both have already said. Obviously, I wish Roz the best and super happy that Bartrip has signed. But I don't think we can say a whole lot more until a manager is named. There's obviously a lot of work to do, and a little bit concerning that the only thing I'm reading about the women's team is that they're used as a circumnavigation of PSR. Right? I just think that just kind of speaks to the mess of what the mess is. That is the way the club treats the women's team in general, right? But a manager needs to be named, and I think we can start to learn a little bit more about how things are going to shape up. But I think probably even more so than on the men's side, it's going to be kind of a dicey season for the women. And as shitty as it is that they're doing all these things with there's no relegation, they are going to increase the number of teams right this season after. But I don't really. I think when it comes to the no relegation piece, I just don't like the chopping and changing of the women's football right now through the FA. But all that being said, it could suit Spurs perfectly fine this season to be able to stay safe as they get through, again, what I think is going to be a pretty dicey season for them, but just kind of a mess.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. You guys want to talk kits? We do have a new kit for Tottenham Hotspur. The away kit is out. As I pull it up here on the screen for folks watching on our YouTube page. It is an all black kit, and it is, in my opinion, kind of gorgeous. I really, really like this new away kit that Spurs have put together. It's the first all black or mainly black kit in about a decade for Spurs, going back, I think, to the Under Armour days, really. Yeah. I have not bought a new kit from the club in probably 3 or 4 years, and this is probably going to break that streak. I'm probably going to wait for the third kit to come out, which I believe we're getting potentially this week or maybe next. It looks like a yellow number with an old school badge that looks pretty cool as well. But this black kit, I am a big fan of. I like the subtle cross hatch stitching on it. It's nice, and I really like it. What do you guys think?
It is subtle,
It's subtle. It's subtle for sure.
I feel like looking at this picture here on our screen is bringing up one of my concerns, which is that the detail will be totally lost on the pitch. We'll see, but y'all know how I feel about Nike. I feel like they just don't do anything that excites me ever. Like, I think this is a perfectly nice kit. I'm not going to rush out to buy it because it's just not very special to me, but it will at least look clean. And I feel like that's the best I can expect from Nike for Spurs at this point. So it's fine.
Yeah, I think Nike's either, I think I've used the metaphor before. They gave like a 6-year-old a crayon and said, "Here, create a kit," right? But it's either that or just a very basic kit. I do prefer the latter of those two options from Nike, right? So I really like it. I think it's a super clean kit, and clean is the word that I think most people are going to be using with this kit. So good shout, Caroline. But yeah, I think it's a nice kit. It's certainly much better than the home kit, and I'll look forward to Spurs wearing this one as often as possible.
It's funny. I agree. Nike does tend to do a better job when they just keep it clean and simple. But I think the last away kit I bought was that Cosmic kit that was really loud and kind of, didn't look like a training kit, did look like a kit, but was like, had a little bit of a training kit vibe. And I did enjoy that one as well. So they have done some weird ones that I mean, we all point to the there was that blue kind of almost like zebra stripe looking away kit that they did a few years ago. And then of course going back even further, the Champions League kit, which of course we all fell in love with because of what happened in it with the Lucas Moura hat trick and all of that in Amsterdam. But like that turned into a really beloved kit, and that was pretty funky too. So I do like the simplicity that Nike puts together, but sometimes they do good things. I think it's really hard with Spurs specifically because we wear white at home to do much with a white kit that's going to stand out. They tend to have a little bit more freedom of expression with the away kit and the third kit. And I think that they've at least succeeded in that this year with this black one. And again, we have a yellow one coming, which I think is going to be really fun to look at as well. So like I said, I'm on board with this one. I definitely think that this one will find its way to my closet and my rotation, even though I'm not a huge kit guy in general. But this one just really speaks to me. It's clean, and I'm also someone who tends to wear the blacks, the dark blues, the grays. You know, I'm a fair skinned ginger boy, so this is what we have to do in order to make things work. You know what I'm saying? So that's where it is.
Speaking of yellow kits, I'm sitting here laughing. Do you remember when the Bale season when we had the yellow kit that essentially like was a gradient of how hydrated you were when you peed, and you could use it as a wonderful way to determine if you drank enough water. So shout out to Nike for that one for sure. I'm hoping this yellow kit is better than that one, but yellow kit's kind of scare me right now.
You know what though? In hindsight, I regret not getting that one because sometimes I see pictures of it and I'm like, man, it actually really did pop, on the pitch. So
agreed.
Well, that was when they were doing the whole Nike. It was like there was a special like Nike brand that was trying to get off there as well, and they had like the Spurs with the blue and the yellow, and I have a few pieces from that time, but I did not get that kit either. It was very much the urine test kit, and we don't need that in our lives really either.
Just drink a lot of water. You don't got to worry about it. Just stay
Hey
hydrated.
man, you don't have to tell me. It's going to be like 114 degrees Fahrenheit here in Arizona today. It is definitely hydration time where I live. Before we get out of here, guys, I just wanted to give. Really, I want to see if Scott has anything funny to say on these two topics. But let's go to the trials and tribulations of former Spurs managers category here. We can I guess start with Mauricio Pochettino, the current head coach of the U.S. men's national team, currently in the Gold Cup.
Current is the key word there.
Current as of this recording. They play this evening in the quarterfinal. It's Costa Rica, right? That's who they play. I want to say, yeah. Okay. As you can tell, I'm really paying attention. But Mauricio Pochettino, it came out earlier this week, interviewed or spoke with Brentford about their managerial position, which was, of course, vacated by Thomas Frank before they made their hire. And forgive me, I don't have the name of the gentleman that they hired. I don't remember who it was, but apparently Poch was in the mix for the Brentford job. Now, he did deny this in an interview with Fox Sports and said that there was never a conversation. That's not a thing. But man, could you imagine if Mauricio Pochettino? I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit to blame for this, to be perfectly honest, because I keep stoking the fires of Poch is definitely coming back to Spurs by like December, January. You know what's happening. He's not going to manage the U.S. in the World Cup next summer. It's all going to be a shit show. But then this happened, and I was like, oh my God, my whole joke is this coming to fruition? What's going on here, Scott? What's up with your boy?
Look, there are a lot of U.S. men's national team fans who are furious over this. I'm not one of them.
No wonder.
Yeah. Look, our contingent of talent, our captain, Mr. America, blah, 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 this shiny new documentaries out about him, just decides, yeah, I don't think I'm interested in playing in the premier CONCACAF competition as the captain of the team, right? It's best for the team if I don't play. Then you've got McKinney, you've got Weah, you've got, McKinney, Weah, Reyna, I understand somewhat. Club World Cup, there's an argument there. You've got Yunus Musa, who decides he needs a rest. Didn't play at all last season, like at all for AC Milan. So if I'm Poch, I'm looking at the situation and saying these MFers like don't even want to play for their national team. Like, what a fucking joke. Sure, Brentford, I'll have a conversation with you. Now, that makes me question why we didn't have a conversation with Pochettino and with Thomas Frank, but that's just a Scott Bird problem. And
how do you know that they didn't? How are you sure that they didn't?
Because he'd be at Spurs if that happened. Let me tell you a little bit about.
Or he would have leaked it to the media, definitely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, now if Poch came out and said I didn't interview with Brentford, I believe him. Like, I don't think he's going to come out and lie to the world like that. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he ended up not coaching the men's national team through the World Cup, because as someone who comes from Argentina, like, then nothing is more important than the national team. If you're playing a friendly against your U18 national team in Argentina, you prioritize that, right? And for him to see what's happening with his core contingent group of players has to be pretty disgusting to him. And I'm glad he put his foot down at least and said, no, you're not playing in friendlies if you don't want to play in the Gold Cup, you jackass. But yeah, we'll see what happens. If he wants to come back to Spurs at any time, I will kick Thomas Frank to the curb myself.
I know you will. Trust me. We are well aware of that. The other big rumor this week is that speaking of American clubs and former Spurs managers, apparently LAFC has Ange Postecoglou on its short list to replace Steve Cherundolo, who's going to be stepping down at the end of this season. Ange to LA. What do we think about that one, mate?
I mean, I feel like really we needed Todd on the pod this episode because LAFC is his club. I'm sure he would be very excited.
He is. He is, by the way. He did inform us that he is all on board, and I can't imagine why he wouldn't be.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I do think from a, Ange perspective, a new continent for him to conquer. So that's exciting. And I think it would be good for MLS, to have a player of his caliber, honestly. Like, we can, make jokes about how he came into Spurs as like an underdog, but in MLS, he would not be an underdog at all. So I think it would be interesting. I'm not a big MLS watcher in general, but it would be interesting to see how he could, rescue them from Cherundolo basically being like, goodbye, USA. Yeah. Which can't blame him really, but and Hugo obviously is still at LAFC, right? So he would get the Ange experience, so that would be fun. So yeah, why not?
And honestly, the flight from LA to Oz is way better than the flight from London back down there. So I've done that leg, and it's still long as hell. Don't get me wrong, but it's better than flying from London back down to Australia. So maybe a little closer to home. I'll tell you what. I am not an MLS person, but if Ange is coaching LAFC, I will poke in at that. I would like to see that, especially if Hugo is still in between the sticks at that point. That would be pretty interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, look, I think this is really exciting for Major League Soccer. LAFC is a pretty cool club. I've been fortunate to go to a home game at BMO Park. Is that what it's called? BMO Stadium, something like that.
I think they call it BMO, which always makes me laugh.
BMO. Yeah, well, Todd actually took me to a match there. We sat in, I think, the 5th or 6th row. It was an awesome experience. That place, I've been to a fair few MLS parks, and that is the closest to a European atmosphere I've ever seen at an MLS park. So I think Ange would enjoy it. I also think they have a squad that's pretty well suited to the Ange system, especially the fullback position. I think Hollingshead, for example, will invert really well. Ange would probably win something in his first season. Wouldn't need until his second to get it done if he came to LAFC.
That would ruin the whole bit, though. Like let's not get hasty.
But honestly, like his media presence, just the character that is Ange Postecoglou would be really good for MLS. I think the only thing I'll say that is a little bit disappointing, and you guys know that I wasn't super high on Ange towards the end of his tenure and think it was the right decision to part ways, but his only links to opportunities are MLS and the Saudi Pro League, which I think is just kind of a bummer and a little bit damning on Ange Postecoglou himself. I would think that somewhere in Europe would be interested in him, but maybe it's the case where any opportunities he's sniffing out in Europe are just kind of bottom feeders and really don't present him any opportunity to actually compete for things, which if I'm looking at this is totally hypothetical. Like, I've heard nothing along the lines of this at all. But if you say hypothetically, like a I don't know, a Spezia or a Parma or something comes to you, or LAFC, I'm probably going to chill on the beach in LA and compete for titles, in CONCACAF, as opposed to just a bottom feeder club in a Serie A or a Spain or Germany or wherever he could end up. Right. So I'd be super happy for Ange. And as you both have already mentioned, I would tune in and root for Ange anytime he's not playing Houston.
Yeah, as long as it's not Houston, absolutely. That's, I think, going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. You can follow us on the socials at Tottenham Depot. A little bit of housekeeping here at the end going forward. Next week, we're TBD. I'm going out of town with the wife for her birthday. Happy early birthday to my lovely wife who puts up with me doing this silly podcast every week. But we may be a little late next week, or may just skip a week. We'll be in contact on the socials about all of that. Be sure to follow us on the socials at Tottenham Depot. And until then, we will talk to you then. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.